In a big shiny building where the world's richest people had come together, there was a janitor named Matteo. Matteo wasn't like the others there. While the billionaires wore fancy suits and spoke about deals worth millions or even billions, Matteo quietly did his work. He pushed his cleaning cart down long, polished hallways, mopping floors, emptying trash, and making sure the rooms looked perfect. Most of the time, nobody noticed him. Matteo had worked as a janitor for a few years now. It wasn't what he dreamed of when he was younger, but life had taken a different path for him. Before this, he had studied languages at university. He loved words, and he was really good at understanding and speaking different languages, some of them very rare. But his family had fallen on hard times, and Matteo had to stop studying and start working to help support them. So, he took the janitor job at this big conference center, where rich business people and important leaders came from all over the world. Matteo liked the job. It was honest work, and it gave him a chance to listen in on conversations, learn about new things, and sometimes just watch the fascinating people around him. On this particular day, the place was buzzing with excitement. There was a big tech summit happening, an event where people talked about new inventions, technology, and business deals that could change the future. The hall was packed with people wearing expensive suits, holding phones, and talking fast. Matteo moved quietly around the rooms, cleaning up after the busy guests. As he pushed his mop down a corridor, Matteo overheard some laughter coming from a group gathered near the main hall. Curious, he stopped to listen. The people were talking about a very old and mysterious document, a piece of paper with strange writing that almost no one could read. One man, a famous billionaire who was well known for making risky but successful deals, was holding the document. He was joking with his friends, saying, "If anyone here can translate this, I'll marry them myself." Everyone laughed, thinking it was just a silly joke. The man was known for his sense of humor and sometimes said things just to get a reaction. Matteo smiled to himself. He knew that the writing was not just strange. It was in a language many people didn't understand anymore. Years ago, he had studied languages like this in university, but he never thought he would get a chance to use that knowledge here, especially while working as a janitor. At that moment, something inside Matteo stirred. He looked at the group, then at the document in the billionaire's hand. He felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. What if he could really translate it? What if he could prove that all his knowledge was not wasted? But at the same time, what would the rich people say if a janitor stepped up and claimed he could do what none of them could? For a few seconds he hesitated. Then with a steady voice he said, "Excuse me, may I see the document?" The laughter stopped immediately. The group looked at him surprised. A janitor wanted to translate the billionaire's mysterious paper? It sounded ridiculous. One man chuckled. "The janitor wants to play expert? This should be good." The billionaire looked at Matteo and raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by the boldness. But instead of brushing him off, he handed the document over. "All right, let's see what you've got," he said with a grin. Matteo took the paper carefully. His hands trembled slightly, but his mind was sharp. He looked at the letters, symbols, and strange marks on the paper. Slowly, words started to form in his mind. He recognized the language. It was a rare dialect from a remote part of Africa, a language spoken by a small group of people whose stories and agreements had been mostly forgotten by the outside world. As Matteo read aloud, the room grew quiet. The words he spoke told a story of an ancient contract between local tribes and traders, describing land boundaries and rights that had never been properly understood. He explained the meaning behind some symbols, corrected a few common mistakes, and even pointed out details that the billionaire's own experts had missed. People stared at him in disbelief. How could a janitor know so much about something so complicated? The billionaire's smile faded into a look of respect. One of his top translators checked Matteo's work and nodded slowly. "He's right," the translator said. Suddenly, Matteo was not invisible anymore. The same people who had ignored him minutes before were now paying attention. Some whispered to each other, amazed at the unexpected talent standing in front of them. Matteo felt a mix of pride and relief. All the years of hard work, the sacrifices, and the quiet hopes were paying off in this moment. The billionaire stepped forward and clapped Matteo on the shoulder. "You have something special," he said. "Not many people could do what you just did." Matteo smiled but kept his humility. "I just want to help," he said simply. That day, Matteo didn't just clean floors. He cleaned away the assumptions people had about him. He showed that sometimes talent hides in the most unexpected places, and that it only takes one moment to change everything. As the conference continued, Matteo found himself invited to join discussions he never dreamed of being part of. People wanted to hear his thoughts, his translations, and his insights. What started as a janitor's quiet day had turned into the beginning of something much bigger. Matteo knew this was just the start. But for the first time in a long time, he felt hope. A hope that his past skills, his passion for languages, and his hard work could lead him back to a better future. And all of it began with a simple challenge, a billionaire's joke, and the courage to speak up when no one expected him to. After that surprising moment when Matteo translated the mysterious document, the room was filled with quiet amazement. People who had been laughing just moments before now looked at him with respect and curiosity. The billionaire who had made the joke was still smiling, but this time it was a smile full of genuine interest. Matteo felt a mix of emotions. His heart was pounding. He was happy to finally use the skills he had worked so hard to learn, but also nervous. He didn't know what would come next. Would this change anything for him? Would the rich and powerful people treat him differently, or would they just laugh it off and ignore him again once the moment passed? The billionaire stepped forward and said, "You've done something impressive. Most of us here have experts and translators who work for us, but you, a janitor, just showed us something we couldn't. That's worth something." Some of the people around the room nodded. One woman whispered to her colleague, "That's incredible. He's got real talent." Matteo smiled politely but kept quiet. He wasn't sure what to say. The truth was, he didn't want to just impress people. He wanted a chance to prove himself in a bigger way, to show that his knowledge wasn't just a one-time trick. But he didn't want to seem pushy or out of place. Then the billionaire did something unexpected. He invited Matteo to join him and a few of his closest advisors for dinner that evening. "I want to hear more from you," he said. "Let's talk." Matteo was surprised. Dinner with a billionaire? That seemed like a dream. But he didn't hesitate. He accepted the invitation. Later that day, Matteo cleaned the conference halls with a new sense of purpose. His co-workers noticed the change in him. He walked a little taller and smiled more. Some of them asked what had happened, but Matteo kept the details to himself. He wanted to focus, to prepare for what might come next. When evening came, Matteo dressed carefully. He put on his cleanest clothes, not a suit, but neat and respectful. He arrived at the restaurant where the billionaire and his advisors waited. The room was elegant with soft lights and quiet music playing in the background. At first, the conversation was about business, the usual talk of deals, technology, and markets. Matteo listened carefully, sometimes asking questions to understand better. The billionaire seemed interested in Matteo's thoughts, asking for his opinions on languages, culture, and communication. After a while, the billionaire asked, "Tell me more about yourself. How did you learn these languages? Why do you care so much about this?" Matteo took a deep breath. He didn't usually share much about his past, but now felt that maybe he could trust these people. He talked about how he loved languages since he was a child, how he dreamed of being a linguist, someone who studies and understands the world's many languages. He told them about university and how his family's struggles forced him to leave before finishing his degree. "It wasn't easy," Matteo said quietly. "I had to start working to help my family, so I took this job as a janitor. It's honest work, but sometimes it feels like the world forgets you when you're in a place like this." The billionaire nodded thoughtfully. "Most people don't see the real value in knowledge like yours. But sometimes the greatest talents are hidden where no one expects." As the night went on, the conversation became more personal. Matteo spoke about his hopes for the future, how he wanted to use his skills to help people and build a better life. The billionaire shared some stories too about his own struggles and how he learned to trust people who came from unexpected places. At the end of the dinner, the billionaire said, "You have a rare gift. I want to help you, not just with a job, but with a real chance to grow." Matteo was stunned. He hadn't expected such kindness or opportunity. He thanked the billionaire sincerely. The promise felt real. Over the next few days, Matteo found himself spending more time with the billionaire's team. They invited him to meetings where he was asked to help with translations and cultural advice. Matteo worked hard, showing he was more than just a helper. He was a valuable part of the team. Word began to spread. People who once ignored Matteo now greeted him warmly. Some even asked for his advice. It was a new world for him, one filled with respect and possibility. But Matteo never forgot where he came from. He still cleaned the halls when needed, remembering that every step of the journey mattered. He stayed humble, working quietly and always ready to learn. One afternoon, while reviewing an old document with the Billionaire's legal team, Matteo noticed something important. The document mentioned land rights that had been misunderstood for years. He explained that honoring those rights was not only fair, but could open doors to new partnerships with local communities. The billionaire listened carefully. "This could change everything," he said. With Matteo's help, they began reaching out to the community leaders mentioned in the documents. Matteo's knowledge of their language and culture helped build trust. The talks were respectful and honest, something rare in big business. As the discussions moved forward, Matteo realized how much difference one person could make. His courage to step forward, his patience, and his respect for others were opening new paths, not just for business, but for people who had long been forgotten. Matteo's life was changing. From the janitor who swept floors and cleaned rooms, he was becoming someone who could shape big decisions and bring people together. His story was proof that no matter where you start, with courage and kindness, you can reach places you never imagined. And all of this had started with a simple moment. The chance to translate a mysterious document and the bravery to say, "Let me try." After dinner with the billionaire and his team, Matteo's world started to change slowly but surely. He still had his job as a janitor, but now his days were filled with new challenges and chances. People looked at him differently, not as just the man who cleaned the floors, but as someone with knowledge, skill, and value. One morning, Matteo arrived early at the conference center. The air was cool and the sunlight filtered softly through the large windows. As he pushed his cleaning cart down the hall, a young assistant approached him nervously. "Sir, the billionaire wants to see you in his office," she said quietly. Matteo's heart skipped a beat. He nodded and followed her through a maze of corridors until they reached a glass door. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The billionaire was there, surrounded by papers and maps, looking focused but welcoming. "Good morning," he said with a smile. "I've been thinking about the document you translated. It's part of something bigger than we first thought." Matteo listened carefully as the billionaire explained that the document was linked to an old agreement between a group of indigenous people and traders. It described land ownership and rights that had never been fully respected. The problem was, many companies had been trying to use the land for mining and business without understanding the true meaning of the contract. "That's where you come in," the billionaire said. "We need someone who understands the language and culture to help us make sure everything is done the right way. I want you to be part of this project." Matteo felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was a huge responsibility. But he also knew this was the chance he had been waiting for, to use his skills, to do something meaningful and to prove himself. Over the next few days, Matteo met with a small team of experts, lawyers, translators, and local community representatives. They pored over old papers, maps, and stories. Matteo shared his knowledge of the language and the culture, explaining the deeper meaning behind words and symbols that others had missed. One afternoon, while studying a particularly difficult part of the document, Matteo noticed something important. The wording suggested that the land in question wasn't just valuable because of minerals, it was also sacred to the local people. This meant any plan for mining had to respect their traditions and beliefs. Matteo carefully explained this to the group. "If we don't honor this part, it could cause serious problems. The community won't agree to the deal if they feel disrespected." The team listened closely. The billionaire nodded thoughtfully. "This changes how we need to approach the agreement. We must be fair and honest." With Matteo's help, they arranged meetings with the local community leaders. Matteo acted as a bridge between the two worlds, business and tradition. He spoke their language, understood their culture, and showed respect. Slowly, the leaders began to trust them. These meetings were not easy. The community leaders were cautious and protective. They had seen promises broken before, but Matteo's sincerity and knowledge helped build a connection. He didn't just translate words. He shared their stories and concerns with the billionaire's team. At one meeting, an elder spoke with deep emotion about the land and what it meant to their people. Matteo translated his words carefully, making sure the team understood the importance of every phrase. The billionaire listened quietly, and then spoke with respect. We want to find a way to work together that honors your traditions and benefits everyone. After many discussions, agreements began to take shape. They created a plan that would allow mining but with strict protections for the sacred areas and promises to support the local community through jobs, education, and healthcare. This was a new kind of deal, one built on respect and understanding, not just profit. Back at the office, the billionaire praised Mateo's work. You've done more than translate words. You've helped us build trust and respect. That's rare and valuable. Mateo smiled, feeling proud but humble. He knew there was still much work to do, but this was a step forward. As days passed, Mateo's role grew. He was invited to more meetings, given access to documents, and included in important decisions. His colleagues started seeing him not as a janitor, but as a key member of the team. Still, Mateo remembered his roots. He kept working hard, learning every day, and staying humble. He knew that respect wasn't just about a title. It was earned through honesty and effort. One afternoon, Mateo was asked to help translate a speech the billionaire planned to give about the new project. The speech had to be clear and respectful, especially to the local people. Mateo spent hours working on the translation, making sure every word honored the culture and the promises made. When the speech was delivered, it was praised for its sincerity and respect. Mateo's touch was there in every sentence. This success was just one of many small victories on a long journey. Mateo's courage to step forward, his deep knowledge, and his kindness were changing not only his life but the lives of many others. Looking back, Mateo thought about the day he first translated that old document. A moment that seemed small then had opened a door to a new world. It taught him that no matter where you start, with patience and courage, you can reach places you never dreamed of. And as he stood by the window of the billionaire's office, watching the sun set over the city, Mateo felt ready for whatever came next. After weeks of meetings, discussions, and careful planning, the room was tense with anticipation. Mateo stood quietly among the team, watching the people around him. He had come a long way from quietly pushing his cleaning cart in the hallways to being part of these important conversations. But this moment felt different. This was where things could change for everyone involved. The billionaire sat at the head of the table, his eyes fixed on the documents before him. Around the table were community leaders, legal experts, and business advisors. The papers on the table were more than just contracts. They were a symbol of a possible future, one where respect and fairness could create something lasting. Mateo could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He had spent hours helping to understand the language of the documents, to explain the traditions behind the words, and to make sure that the voices of the local people were heard. Now it was time for the big decision. One of the community leaders spoke first. His voice was calm but firm. He thanked the team for their respect and patience. Our land is not just soil and rocks. It is our history, our family, and our future. We cannot allow it to be treated as just a business deal. Mateo translated carefully, making sure the meaning was clear to everyone. The team nodded, understanding the deep emotion behind the words. The billionaire then stood up and addressed the group. We want this to be more than a business transaction. We want to build a partnership, one where your people benefit, your culture is respected, and the land is protected. There was a pause as the community leaders considered the offer. Mateo watched closely. He could see hope in their eyes, but also caution. This was not a simple promise. It was a commitment. Over the next few hours, the two sides worked through the details. Mateo helped explain complex legal terms in simple language. He reminded the team about the sacred areas the community wanted to protect. He made sure the promises were clear and fair. One of the lawyers asked Mateo about a particular phrase in the document that was difficult to translate. Mateo thought carefully and explained that the phrase meant shared guardianship, a concept where both sides take responsibility for the land's care. The room fell silent. The idea was powerful. It wasn't about ownership alone, it was about respect and shared responsibility. The billionaire smiled. This is the kind of agreement I want to support. It's fair, and it honors the people who have cared for this land for generations. The community leaders agreed to move forward, but with one condition. They wanted ongoing involvement in how the land would be used. They didn't want to be left out after the deal was signed. Mateo nodded. That's important. We want to make sure your voices are part of every step. The team agreed to create a committee with members from both sides to oversee the project and protect the land and its people. As the meeting ended, Matteo felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was not just about business, it was about justice, respect, and hope. He realized how much his role had grown, from translator to bridge, from helper to trusted advisor. Later that day, the billionaire took Matteo aside. "You've done something extraordinary here," he said quietly. "You didn't just translate words, you translated hopes and dreams. You helped build trust where there was doubt." Matteo smiled, feeling proud but humble. "I just wanted to do what was right," the billionaire nodded. "And that's why you're important. You remind us that people matter, not just profits." As the project moved forward, Matteo stayed closely involved. He visited the communities, listened to their stories, and shared their concerns with the team. He made sure every promise was kept, every tradition honored. Through it all, Matteo learned more about patience, respect, and the power of understanding. He saw how business and culture could come together when people were willing to listen and care. One evening, after a long day, Matteo walked through the halls of the conference center. It felt different now. He was no longer just a janitor. He was part of something bigger, a story of change, respect, and hope. And as he looked out at the city lights shining in the distance, Matteo knew this was only the beginning. Life for Matteo was changing every day. What once seemed like a simple job, cleaning floors, had turned into a journey he never imagined. But even with new responsibilities and new respect, Matteo stayed grounded. He knew that real change took time and there was still a lot to learn. One morning, Matteo arrived at the office early as usual. The building was quiet, with only a few early risers preparing for the busy day ahead. Matteo moved through the halls carrying his cleaning supplies, but his mind was busy with thoughts about the project he was now deeply involved in. He was no longer just translating words on paper. He was helping to connect two very different worlds, the world of business and the world of tradition. Matteo understood how important it was to find balance between these worlds, to make sure neither was ignored or forgotten. That day, Matteo was invited to visit the community whose land was part of the agreement. It was a chance to see the place with his own eyes and to meet the people whose lives would be affected by the decisions being made. The journey was long, but beautiful. Matteo traveled through forests and small villages where life was simple and slow. Children played near the river, and elders sat under large trees sharing stories passed down through generations. Matteo felt a deep respect for the land and its people. When he arrived at the community center, he was greeted warmly. The local leaders welcomed him as a friend, not just a representative of the billionaire or the company. Matteo listened carefully as they spoke about their hopes and fears. One leader spoke softly but with strength. "We want progress, but we also want to keep our way of life. Our traditions are part of who we are." Matteo nodded. "I understand. That's why I'm here, to help make sure your voices are heard and your culture is protected." The community members showed Matteo around. He saw the sacred sites they wanted to protect, places filled with stories and meaning. He met families who depended on the land for food, medicine, and their livelihoods. As the day went on, Matteo felt more connected than ever to the people he was working with. Their hopes became his hopes. Their challenges became his challenges. Back in the city, Matteo returned with new ideas and a stronger sense of purpose. He shared what he had seen and heard with the billionaire's team. They listened and promised to adjust their plans to better support the community's needs. One important change was a new program to create jobs for local people in the project. Instead of bringing workers from far away, they would train community members to work in the mining operations, in education, and in healthcare. This way, the project would help the community grow and thrive. Matteo helped design the training programs, using his knowledge of the language and culture to make them accessible and respectful. He also worked with local schools to provide language classes and cultural education, hoping to keep traditions alive, even as the world around them changed. These efforts were not easy. There were disagreements and setbacks. Some people in the community were still skeptical, remembering past promises that were broken. Some workers resisted the new plans, worried about changes in their jobs. But Matteo stayed patient. He listened carefully to every concern and tried to find solutions that respected everyone's needs. He knew that trust was built slowly, through small actions and honest communication. One afternoon, Matteo received a call that some of the elders wanted to meet him privately. He was nervous but honored. When he arrived at their meeting place, the elders spoke openly. "We have watched how you work," one said. "You do not just talk. You listen, you care. That means much to us." Matteo felt a warm feeling inside. It was a reminder that his work was more than just translating words. It was about building relationships and understanding. As months passed, the project began to show real results. The mining operation started carefully, respecting the protected areas. Jobs were created, and local schools began offering new programs. Healthcare improved with new clinics, and the community felt stronger and more hopeful. Matteo was proud but never forgot his roots. He still worked hard every day, always learning, always ready to help. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Matteo sat quietly in his small apartment. He thought about how far he had come, from a janitor quietly cleaning floors to a trusted advisor helping to shape the future. He knew the road ahead would have more challenges, but he was ready. Because he understood something important. Real success is not just about money or power. It's about respect, trust, and the courage to do what is right. And for Matteo, that was just the beginning of a much bigger story. The days turned into weeks, and Matteo's role continued to grow in ways he had never expected. Each morning he woke up with a sense of purpose that pushed him forward. It wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about the people, the community, and the future they were all building together. One morning, Matteo arrived early at the office and found the billionaire already waiting for him. The billionaire smiled warmly and said, "We have something new for you. We want you to lead a team focused on community relations." Matteo was surprised but honored. Leading a team was a big step. He thought about the journey he had been on, from quietly cleaning floors to now leading important projects. It was a reminder of how much things had changed when people were given a chance. The team Matteo was asked to lead was made up of people from different backgrounds. Some were experts in culture and language. Others had experience in business or social work. Matteo welcomed the chance to work closely with them, knowing they shared a goal: to help the community thrive while respecting their traditions. Their first task was to create a plan for ongoing communication between the company and the community. Matteo knew this was important. In the past, many projects had failed because people didn't talk openly or listen to each other. He wanted to change that. Matteo suggested regular meetings where community members could share their concerns and ideas. He also proposed creating a newsletter in the local language to keep everyone informed about the project's progress. The team worked hard to develop the plan, and soon the first meeting was held. Matteo stood at the front of the room, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The community leaders, workers, and company representatives filled the seats. Everyone was eager to speak and be heard. Matteo began by thanking everyone for coming and explaining the purpose of the meeting. He encouraged people to speak openly and promised that their voices would be respected. As the meeting went on, Matteo listened carefully to the stories and concerns shared. Some people were worried about how the project might affect their land or traditions. Others asked about job opportunities or education programs for their children. Matteo translated each concern clearly to the company team, and then shared the company's responses honestly. He made sure the conversation was respectful and productive, helping both sides understand each other better. After the meeting, many people came up to Matteo to thank him. One elder said, "You listened to us in a way no one else has. That gives us hope." Matteo smiled, feeling the warmth of those words. It reminded him why he did this work, not for fame or money, but to make a real difference. Over the following months, Matteo's team worked to improve the programs in the community. They helped set up workshops to teach new skills and supported local schools with supplies and resources. Matteo also organized cultural exchange events, where company workers could learn about the community's traditions, and community members could see how the project worked. These events helped build trust and friendship between the two groups. One day, while visiting the community, Matteo noticed a young boy struggling with his schoolwork. Matteo took time to help him with reading and writing, encouraging the boy to keep learning. That small moment reminded Matteo of his own childhood dreams and why education was so important. Back at the office, Matteo continued to push for fairness and respect in every decision. He spoke up during meetings, reminding people to think about the human side of the project. The billionaire often praised Matteo's work. "You have a gift for bringing people together," he said. "Your kindness and understanding make all the difference." Matteo knew the praise was not just about his skills, but about his heart. He cared deeply about the people and the land, and that passion showed in everything he did. But Matteo also faced challenges. Sometimes disagreements would arise between community members or within the company. Matteo had to find ways to calm tensions, listen carefully, and find solutions that respected everyone's needs. One afternoon, there was a disagreement about the use of a particular piece of land. Some community members wanted to protect it completely, while others saw it as a chance for new jobs. Matteo helped organize a meeting where both sides could express their views. Through patient listening and open discussion, they found a compromise that balanced protection and opportunity. These moments taught Matteo valuable lessons about leadership and empathy. He realized that true progress was not about winning arguments, but about finding common ground. As the project moved forward, Matteo felt proud of the changes taking place. The community was stronger, and the company was more respectful and responsible. One evening, after a long day, Matteo sat quietly by the window of his small apartment. He thought about how far he had come. From janitor to team leader, from outsider to trusted friend. He knew the journey was not over, but he felt ready for whatever came next. Matteo smiled to himself. His story was proof that with courage, kindness, and respect, even the smallest voices could make a big difference. Time was passing quickly, and Matteo's work had become a central part of his life. He wasn't just helping with translations or meetings anymore. He was now deeply involved in shaping a future where business and community could grow together. But with that growth came new challenges, ones Matteo hadn't expected. One morning, Matteo received news that some workers from outside the community were unhappy with the new job training programs. They felt that too many opportunities were going to the local people, and some believed they were being left behind. This caused tension in the workplace and threatened to disrupt the progress they had made. Matteo knew this was a delicate situation. He understood both sides. The locals wanted to protect their opportunities, and the outside workers wanted fairness too. Matteo decided the best way forward was to bring everyone together for an honest conversation. He organized a meeting with representatives from both groups. Matteo made sure the space was welcoming and respectful. As people gathered, some looked nervous, unsure if their voices would really be heard. Matteo started the meeting by sharing his own story. He talked about his journey, how he had been overlooked for years, and how a chance and some kindness had changed everything for him. His openness helped calm the room. "I understand how it feels to be left out," Matteo said softly, "but we are all part of this project. Our goal is to find a way where everyone can succeed." People began to open up, sharing their frustrations and hopes. Some outside workers worried they would lose their jobs. Some local community members expressed fear that the project might not last if too many people were unhappy. Matteo listened carefully, making sure each concern was heard. He then helped the group brainstorm solutions. They agreed to expand training programs so more workers could learn new skills. They also planned social events to build friendships between different groups, hoping that understanding would reduce tension. This meeting was a turning point. Slowly, people began to see each other not as competitors but as teammates working toward a common goal. While working on these challenges, Matteo also focused on the cultural side of the project. He knew that respecting the community's traditions was as important as the economic benefits. One day, a respected elder invited Matteo to join a local festival. Matteo accepted gladly. The festival was a beautiful celebration of the community's history, filled with music, dancing, and stories told by firelight. Matteo watched with awe as people honored their ancestors and the land. He felt grateful to be included in something so special. The experience reminded him that this project was about more than contracts or money. It was about people, their identities, and their connection to the earth. After the festival, Matteo spoke with the elder. "Thank you for letting me be part of this. I want to help make sure your traditions are respected in every step of the project." The elder smiled kindly. "You are more than a translator. You are a bridge between our worlds. These words touched Matteo deeply. He realized that his role was about more than business or language. It was about building trust, respect, and understanding between different worlds. Back at the office, Matteo continued to work hard. The billionaire noticed his dedication and invited him to join a special strategy group. This group was tasked with planning the next phase of the project, which would include expanding to new areas. Matteo was honored but also nervous. This was a big responsibility. He wanted to make sure the lessons learned so far were not forgotten. He spoke up during meetings, reminding everyone about the importance of respect, listening, and fairness. One day, the group faced a tough decision. A new area was discovered with valuable resources, but it was also home to an even smaller, more isolated community. The question was how to proceed without harming the people and their way of life. Matteo shared what he had learned from the first community. "We must involve the people from the start," he said. "We must listen to their needs and concerns, just like before." The team agreed to take a careful, respectful approach. Matteo was asked to lead the initial talks with the new community. He accepted, knowing this was another chance to build trust and understanding. As Matteo prepared for this new challenge, he thought about how far he had come. From a janitor who translated one important document, he was now leading conversations that could change many lives. He smiled quietly. The journey had not been easy, but it was worth every step. Matteo felt ready for the future, knowing that with respect, patience, and kindness, even the biggest challenges could be met. As the project moved into its new phase, Matteo felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This time, he was heading into uncharted territory, meeting a smaller, more isolated community that had little contact with the outside world. He knew this would be a big challenge, but he was ready to face it with the same respect and care he had shown before. Before leaving for the new community, Matteo spent time preparing. He learned everything he could about their history, culture, and language. He wanted to approach them with kindness and understanding, not just as a business messenger, but as a friend. When Matteo arrived, he was greeted cautiously. The people were curious but wary. Their lives had been quiet and protected for a long time, and they weren't sure what to make of this new project or the stranger in their midst. Matteo didn't rush. He spent days simply listening and observing. He attended their daily gatherings, helped with small tasks, and showed genuine interest in their stories and traditions. Slowly, walls began to come down. One afternoon, an elder invited Matteo to sit with the community leaders. It was a sign of trust. Matteo knew this was his chance to build a real relationship. He spoke honestly about the project and his role. He explained that the company wanted to work with them, not against them, and that their needs and wishes would always come first. The leaders asked many questions about jobs, the environment, education, and how their culture would be respected. Matteo answered as honestly as he could, never making promises he couldn't keep. Over time, the community agreed to work with the project, but with clear conditions. They wanted to protect sacred lands, preserve their traditions, and have a say in every decision. Matteo promised to be their voice and to make sure their concerns were always heard. Back at the company, Matteo pushed hard for these promises to be honored. He worked closely with the engineers and planners to adjust the project. They created new policies to protect the environment and made sure community members were involved in monitoring the work. The changes were not easy for the company or the workers. Some wanted to move faster or ignore the new rules, but Matteo stood firm. He reminded everyone that respecting people and the land was more important than speed or profit. Months passed, and the partnership began to show real success. Jobs were created, schools improved, and the community's culture was celebrated openly. Matteo saw families growing stronger, children learning both their traditions and new skills. One evening, Matteo stood with the elder from the new community, looking out over the land. The sky was painted with colors of sunset, and the air was filled with the sounds of laughter and music. The elder turned to Matteo and said quietly, "You have brought us hope. You have shown that respect can build bridges." Matteo smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. He thought about how far he had come, from a janitor who cleaned floors to a man helping build a future for many. His story was no longer just his own. It was about every person who had believed in respect, kindness, and the power of listening. And as Matteo looked at the horizon, He knew this was only the beginning. Because when people come together with open hearts, they can create something truly extraordinary.